Welcome. For those of you I have not met, and there aren't too many of you that I haven't, I'm Lynn Holtain. I'm the Executive Director of the Victoria Law Foundation, and today is day one of 2024 Law Week. So welcome. You've made it on the first day. It is so wonderful to have you here for this event, and what we're going to do is take a look at some data from the Public Understanding of Law Survey, otherwise known as PULSE, and take some time to reflect on what that means for practice and how we might respond as people who work in and around the sector. But before we go any further, I do have to congratulate you because you have passed the first test, for which you all received a gold coin. If you didn't, come up and see me and I'll make sure you get suitably rewarded. The point of this is that just like the labyrinth it was to find your way here, such is our justice system. More of that anon, but I'm very pleased that we've managed to, squeeze some chocolate into you early in the piece. Let me first acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. We recognise their abiding connection to this land, its waterways and community, and that the lands were never ceded. It is my profound privilege to pay respects to their elders and to all the generations who have nurtured this land for over 50,000 years and continue to do so, and to extend that respect to the elders of all the lands you may be joining us on this afternoon. As we know from Uruk and other truth and reconciliation experiences around the world, acknowledging the past is an essential step in building a better and more equitable future. At the VLF, we recognise the impact of colonisation, its legacy of injustice, and the marginalisation of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. At the VLF, we aim to break down the barriers to justice for all Victorians through our work in research and education and grants. We are committed to making a sincere and positive contribution to a better justice system for all of us, especially those who are vulnerable and in most need. And today is part of that undertaking. So how are we going to run this show? I will take you through a few data points and reflections from the first two volumes of PULSE. For those of you who are unfamiliar with this work, it's an extensive population sample survey of 6,008, never forget the 8, Victorians from right across the state. We have currently published 2 of the 3 first reports that will emerge from PULSE. The first one looked at legal need, and the second looks at legal capability, and the third one will look at the nexus between the two. So we'll look at some of the data that has emerged from PULSE 1 and 2 in just a moment. And then we'll hear from some of your colleagues in the sector who are taking really interesting approaches to connecting with community and to engaging with people and their problems in ways that are really working. And then we'll ask you to do a bit of brainstorming at your tables, and then at the end of that we will wrap it all up with some reflections from you back to the entire group, and I will come and visit every table and ask for your top 3 reflections or findings or discussion points at the end of the proceedings. So when you're talking, think about the top 3 that you want to reflect and offer back to the group. We are recording the session in 2 different ways. We have the fabulous Dan recording as a videographer. Well, 3 different ways. We have the lovely Eugene, who is taking photographs, and we also have Madison, who, as you see, is our on-site scribe. We will not, however, be recording your conversations at your tables. It's really critical that you have opportunity to be as candid and as frank as you possibly can. Chatham House rules, nothing leaves the room attributed to anybody in particular. So we want this to be a real opportunity to get honest about where we're at and what we need to do, and we will not breach that trust. But we are, as you can imagine, looking forward to taking the evidence of today and working with it further. We hope also that today is the first of many conversations along these lines. It's an opening Pulse in very many ways, to think about what we do, how it's affecting people, and how we can move from here. It is, as I said, a safe space, and I encourage you to be as respectful in your conversations as possible, but feel free, particularly to push back on me after what you're about to hear. So, looking forward to that. As we've already alluded, a bit like the law, this room was quite hard to find. And as a matter of general practice, we don't teach kids or adults, for that matter, how to find law. What to do if they have a problem with an employer or a landlord or a co-worker or a government department. It is not part of the curriculum. It is not a general experience that people tell you these things at a young and useful age. And as I think you know, because it's in the title of today, 66% of Victorians didn't recognise that their problems were legal or had a legal dimension when we asked them during the Pulse survey. That's why we're here, to try and figure out how we get from 66 to something better than that. Because that's 2/3 of the state who don't think to look for assistance from a community legal centre or from legal aid or from VALS or JIRA or from a law firm, because they don't know their problem has a legal aspect. So we've got a branding problem. And I know some of you are thinking darkly, well, thank God more people don't know, because we can't actually manage the people that we already have, far less attracting a whole bunch more. So yes, I understand that dilemma, but when we think about the dimensions of the problem and the importance to respond to that, I think we need to change up our game. So we're at 66% of the population who didn't know their problem had a legal aspect. 42% of Victorians have had civil legal problems in the last 2 years. 42%. Extrapolating over a 2-year period, that's 6.4 million problems. About 3.2 million a year. And of those people who had civil legal problems, over 70% of them experienced stress as a consequence of their legal problem. 15% of them, or about 1 in 7, lost their job. 13% had to move house. So huge numbers of problems at 3.2 million a year, and sometimes a very profound impact on people's lives. We all know in this room that legal problems can literally upend people's lives. They can lead to more problems. They can end up in a horrendous knot, which can be really scary and entirely overwhelming. On the upside, around 20% of people did get legal advice, and around 30% of people got help from other independent sources, like community health services or welfare providers or local councils or other sources of information. So adding those two together, around 50% did get some guidance, which is good, but less than half of that was from lawyers. And maybe that's okay, maybe more sources are good, as long as the information they get is accurate and useful to them. Maybe it's because 25% of respondents thought lawyers weren't interested in their issues. 30% thought lawyers weren't concerned with real people's lives. And putting that another way, 40% thought lawyers weren't geared up for ordinary people to use. And as hard as we might work on meaningful engagement, and as much effort as I know all of you make in this room, if you think about the justice system as a whole, we know that that's correct. We know also from Pulse that people don't always have legal need, even if they have a problem with a legal aspect. So, you know, there are people who perhaps don't need legal assistance. But where people did have a legal need, 78% of that went unmet. So extrapolating again, that's about 2.5 million problems per annum, where the legal system could be of help, but people didn't know or weren't getting what they needed. So we have a volume issue. 13% of Australians live at or below the poverty line. Our collective eligibility criteria means that 8% of households can access free grants of legal aid, which covers casework and representation, and obviously that's the highest level of support. 2 to 3% of that goes to civil legal problems. Let's go to the other side of the planet. In England and Wales, about 25% of the population are eligible for free civil legal aid. So we have an access problem. But as we've already alluded, let's be realistic about this. It's not as if we're suddenly going to throw the gates open and magically attract billions more dollars in funding to expand grants of aid. We know that's not the case. But I have to say that our efforts need to shift if we're going to touch the sides on this. Many of us, and I put myself very squarely in this category, thought that legal information and public education would make a real difference, especially with civil problems where people have some agency themselves. But if you're looking at those numbers, it has not done the job that we might have hoped for. So if we're going to reconsider how to address this large and seemingly pretty intractable problem, I think it's useful to go back to first principles. So I'm going to borrow from Hippocrates and Louisa Gibbs. Some of you will know Louisa. She's the Federation of Community Legal Centres CEO. We had a good conversation about this, and her formula is the Hippocratic first do no harm, and the aid and medical model, which is then do good. Do we do good? We want to, and we mean to, but the reality is that we reward people, not just with gold coins. We reward them when they get through the labyrinth of the law in different ways. We give them some information and some basic advice and hope that they can use it themselves. We send them off to tell their story to someone else. We suggest they ring the LIV and talk to a private lawyer, which often fills people with dread at the prospect of bills that they can't possibly afford. And sometimes we can help them. And we address their legal problems, which are, of course, life problems and get bundled up with so much else, exacerbated by rising levels of stress. So what's in the way? When people have, through luck or persistence or both, found some legal help for their situation, the law is difficult. The language can be opaque, the processes feel really confusing, the outcomes seem very distant. It can be expensive, beyond the reach of most. So what does it take to deal with this? And what kind of person gets through to the other side? Rebel Wilson. Our acting research director, Hugh MacDonald, spotted the dimensions of legal capability in a Rebel Wilson quote that she gave when she won her first defamation case in 2015. She said, and I'm paraphrasing, but very slightly, "This has definitely been a long and very hard fight, but I felt like I had to take a stand against a bully. I had the money and the education," she has an arts and law degree from Uni of New South Wales, "to take on the, quote, harrowing and very expensive fight. I'm a person really confident in my own skin, and I really felt like it was the right thing to do. Not everyone has the strength to stand up for themselves, but I do." So there you have it. That's the formula. Persistence, preparedness to take on the system and the adversary, money, education, contacts, emotional fortitude, confidence. She had it in spades. But to get to and to get the most out of law, you need that capability, that suite. This has long been recognised by many of us in our experience in practice. But now we've measured it and it's in pulse. People need knowledge, attributes, resources and skills. These are the dimensions. of capability. And none of us has a perfect set, not even Rebel Wilson, though she comes pretty close. PALS helps us see those contours much more closely. We can see the people in the data, not just their problems. We can see the different aspects of capability for different people, which means that we've got better tools to respond to their needs and to meet them where they are with their capability and their problems. I know how hard you all work, and I know how many people you help. And I know the extraordinarily impressive outreach work that you do. But when 78% of people in Victoria who have a legal need which is not met, we have a problem. And it's something we have to address together. Yes, it's supply and demand, not enough resources, not enough funding, but there are things that we can do to make sure our responses are more effective, that we don't put people on soul-destroying referral roundabouts, and that we get them support and information that they can use that suits their capability. And then we can go back and check to make sure that what we're giving them is working for them. I'm looking at Michael Smith because we're in that season where we are celebrating 50th birthdays all over town at the moment. Happy birthday, ECLC. And this movement of community legal centres, of legal assistance more broadly, is an extraordinarily powerful one, and one that I think gives us all enormous pride. It was to give people easy and effective access to law and to justice. It is now middle-aged. It is 50 years old. And it's survived through, God knows, the swings and roundabouts of politics and policy. And it's also grown magnificently, and that's an extraordinarily impressive thing. But frankly, it ain't doing the job we need to do. Why does this matter? Because justice is a tenet of our democracy, and it's not just if it's not accessible. Because the burden of inadequate systems falls, as we know, disproportionately on the most vulnerable. Because every single one of us working in this area believes the law is important and can help resolve problems which, as we know, can turn people's lives inside out. And because we are committed to the rule of law, which is about fairness and equity. And from that flows social cohesion and better lives for all of us. So I think that's enough from me. It's about time for you to talk to each other, and we have some questions on your tables for you to address. But before we do that, I'm going to give you a little further inspiration and introduce you to some people that you probably already know and find out a little more about what's happening already in our midst. So I will talk to Michelle first because she's right in front of me. Michelle Tucker, who is the Principal Solicitor and Coordinator with Deakin Law Clinics. Would you like to stand up? Okay. Thank you, so everyone can see you. I am, for those of you who are in the room, I am channeling Belinda Lowe, who did this on Friday night. Thank you very much for being with us and welcome. Now, Michelle, tell us what impact the face-to-face clinical experience has on baby lawyers. Why does it make a difference?
I think after COVID, they do still get a lot from seeing clients on Zoom, and it's good for our clients to actually have Zoom as an option. But the students actually being in the office, seeing clients in real life, dealing with matters, but also dealing with their colleagues. It's an office, it's a law firm, so they get that experience as well, which they didn't during the lockdowns, of course. But we also have a duty lawyer service where we take them to court, and they get to liaise with the police liaison officers, the court registry. The magistrates are really generous with their time. They get to talk to all the lawyers. So that's an experience that's profound. They're doing great.
Do you think it makes a difference to their attitudes about the law and the way it's delivered and their own aspirations in it?
I think it's opening their eyes to a community, especially down at court, that they wouldn't understand often. And I'm going to give you an example, and I don't want to take too long, but one of my students, we made an appointment 3 times for this client for a family law matter, and the client didn't show up the whole time. And many of our students have not experienced disadvantage or understand that a lot of our clients are vulnerable. So the client contacted the 4th time to have an appointment, and my student, he was funny, he's like, "No, she's had her chance. If she can't help herself, we can't help her." And I said, okay. And one thing I find with the students is we're not just teaching them those practical skills. We're not just about client interviewing or plain language writing and so forth. We're teaching them empathy and warmth, and to have an understanding of disadvantage and vulnerability and why often our clients can't access this justice. And that includes reflective practice and debriefing, which we do really well. And the students come out of the experience and want to work in the community sector, which, you know, I think we can all understand there is a little bit of a shortage of us who want to do this and help those, you know, in need. So yeah, it's a really good program.
Tell me that client got another appointment.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
I'm going to go over here and catch up with Katja. Katja and I last saw each other in LA, so, you know, this is a reunion. Katja is from Moonee Valley Legal Service, and we're talking about the concierge service, about which we already know a little bit at the VLF. But what's the need that the concierge service is trying to meet, Katja?
So there's it's actually quite layered. So the program is that we hire young people from the public housing estates where we're located. So we're located on the Ascot Vale estate, and we also service the Flemington estate. And so young people are paid as, I guess, community development workers, and they go out and deliver legal education to other public housing residents. It's a layered program in that for us, it's, I guess the need is that we're trying to build trust and relationships in the community, and by hiring young people from the community, we're building that trust and building a more culturally safe service. But then there's also another aspect of that, which is the young people are gaining office skills around legal education and community development. So I guess it's like a twofold community development program where we're building capacity, but we're also meeting a legal need. And I just should say, like, I can't speak to the lived experience, obviously, of the role, but we do have two legal concierge here in the room tonight. So Barry and Aset were part of the previous program. So if you have questions about that, they're great for a chat.
So what further change or adaptation do you think needs to happen here to develop this program further? Because you have had your ups and downs with this one.
Yes, we have. Look, we did. The funding initially came through government after the hard lockdowns of the towers. It was modelled on the co-health health concierge model. So one of the downs was the model was defunded in that way, and we actually lost all of our legal concierge. We have received an LSB grant to build the program as more of a bicultural model, and so where we're hiring bicultural workers for longer periods of time. And I guess some of the challenges are around, and I think we spoke about this in the presentation in LA, is that it requires a real whole of organisation approach. We can't just see bicultural workers as people that come in to do our community development work. It actually has to reflect in the whole organisation. So it has to be from grassroots all the way through to management. You need to be seeing bicultural workers walk into management meetings. They need to be on the board because they're speaking for their community. And that's a challenge, because I think all of us in the room know how it's really difficult to change the structures of our organisation to be more community representative, and we don't have the answers. We're still working on that.
A work in progress, but a very fine effort. Thank you, Katja.
Thanks.
And finally to Rachel Powning, who's way over here. This is keeping my steps up. Who joins us from the Neighbourhood Justice Centre. Welcome. Thank you very much indeed for coming. So NJC's been around for 15 years.
16.
16. Yes. Sorry, I missed one.
Right.
And what does it do for those people who aren't familiar, and there probably aren't very many, but what do you do to make court less intimidating, more amenable to your community?
Sure. So just briefly, Neighbourhood Justice Centre is what we call a community justice centre. It's part of a growing trend internationally for justice and courts to really open up to the community. So someone asked me at my table, what's the neighbourhood bit about? And we're based in City of Yarra, place-based, responding to the issues within the community of City of Yarra. So we service the whole city. There's a number of things we do to make it accessible, open. So firstly, we do a lot of outreach. We go out and meet with members of the community. We're present at different events, work with marginalised communities a lot around educating on those issues that you've referred to. The centre itself is a very welcoming physical space. So we have what we call dynamic security. You can come to court without going through scanners, but there is a very strong security presence there. We have a lot of other things going on in the centre in addition to a magistrates court. So the benefit of that is that people will come into the centre to access education, services, events, but be within a legal space. So they're learning about the law whilst they're there as well. And the other thing is that for people coming through court, everyone here will know that when people attend court, they're can be at a crisis moment in their lives.
It's never your greatest day, is it?
No. Having said that, any of us could have to go to court. We don't know, and we want it to be positive. But, you know, people often need support whilst in court, so we don't send people on that merry-go-round of referrals. We've got a comprehensive multidisciplinary team, and people will be referred by lawyers into the support that they need, or by the magistrate, and they'll all work together. It's a fabulous model. Yeah.
It is an enormously impressive model,
Yeah.
and 16 years I think is testament to its success, but it's still only one.
Yes.
And we were hoping for many more. Have you got a case study or a story of the sort of impact this has made on somebody who walks through your door? I'm putting
Yes.
Rachel on the spot here.
Yes. Look, there's many, of course, many examples. We absolutely have lower reoffending rates than similar environments. We have high completion rates for orders from court. We have many clients coming back to talk to the magistrate, talk about the success that they've had in their lives. So probably a good case study to mention is we've had a client come through court recently who's been on corrections orders, a number of criminal matters, obviously forensic and history of custody, has had support from mental health, AOD, family violence support. That particular client has recently been able to take custody of his children again with his partner. They came in to see the magistrate probably about 6 weeks ago with their children, and to talk to her about the success in their lives, that couple. So can you imagine all the savings that's achieved to the system, let alone the personal impact on those lives and the children's lives? But big financial gains as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you very much indeed. You may take your seat. I feel like I'm doing mastermind. Thank you to all our little vignette people. What I wanted to achieve there was to offer you some thoughts and ideas about how we might do things differently. Because it would seem to me that on the data, that's the way we need to think. So now is your chance to brainstorm at your tables and talk to your fellow colleagues from the sector, and I look forward very much indeed to your thoughts in about half an hour. If anyone needs additional chocolate coins to get them through, just wave, I'll be there in a second. But this is really, I think, a chance to break it down, to think about it from as many perspectives as we possibly can, because this is a big problem. We can only do this if we're all together and we've got a vision for where we want to head. And I really, really appreciate your coming today and to put your minds to this effort. So I think if you turn over your pieces of paper, you will have questions for you to consider. And just a reminder that at the end of the half hour, we'll be asking for your 3 top tips or reflections. And I look forward to hearing from you then. Thanks. Thank you. Your name is?
Micah,
And you are from?
Court Network.
Thank you very much indeed, Micah, for coming. We love Court Network. Would you like to take us through your key ideas?
Yes, so we're on the table of education, tertiary, apprenticeship, internship and PD. And we spoke about heaps of things, but I think the three kind of key areas we spoke about was the importance of cross-disciplinary education. So engaging like law students in other types of learning as well, such as social work, community development, all the bits and pieces that go with it, but then also engaging people who are studying community development, social work, sociology, psychology, etc. in law too, because they cross together so well in the professional world.
Because law is a social service.
Yes, that it is. We wrote that down. There's more to law than law. We also spoke a lot about like taking law out of the law or the office or even the community legal centres, and thinking about how important it is to have law in libraries and in hospitals, in schools, community houses, at the shops, everywhere else. And we know that that's happening in lots of different places, kind of in pockets in different ways, but thinking about what that looks like if we do it across, Victoria, Australia, the world. Domination.
So this is Law Week 24/7.
Yes, exactly. And then the third one was we spoke a lot about how we are kind of losing, well, I didn't say this because I'm not a lawyer, but we're losing emotional intelligence in the law, and how important it is to embed emotional intelligence across the legal world from uni and beyond, so people are also learning to value emotional intelligence, practicing it, and yeah.
Okay, that's very impressive. Neatly done. Lots of big ideas in there. Do we have another table that captured that sort of content around education and PD? And of course, you're right at the other side of the room. Hello, Bridget.
G'day.
Where are you joining us from?
Victoria Legal Aid.
Welcome.
From the CLE team, so education is my biz. So we had collaborations and partnerships, and one of our particular topics did talk about why is there not a more strong partnership between education and the legal sector. You mentioned it in the introduction about, so many, it being absent in the curriculum. Now, I'm not suggesting that teachers have something added to their curriculum because they are already ridiculously burnt out. Also, I don't think it should be a realistic expectation to have somebody that's not a subject matter expert. So my job is going into schools, and the benefit of when I go in, I see it in the faces. The teachers have questions, the wellbeing team has questions. I think this falls into wellbeing strongly. So I'd really like to explore that right from the top. The other 2 points weren't in that space, but we were talking about doing a sector scan of resources and tools, might potentially identify some gaps, but being conscious that Victoria Legal Aid, large organisation, CLCs might not feel as comfortable in that space, sort of sharing what those resources are because funding is attached. And one thing that was brilliant, I thought, was tying project length to political length. We have politicians that want to be voted in for 3 years and affect change in that time, and yet our projects are funded for 12 months and they want them in and they want them out. And we know that the development of projects can take 12 months to flesh out the challenges, the problems, the barriers, and yet the funding is pulled and we lose people in the industry when we think that 3 years could definitely improve that change to the system. So I don't see why we know that change can be attached to a politician but doesn't get attached to our projects.
Nice.
Thanks.
Thank you. Yes. So longer form, work in schools.
Yes.
Yes.
School lawyers.
How many of you are there?
There are 3 part-time staff that deliver to the entire state of Victoria. Now, that's not the only engagement roles we have at Victoria Legal Aid, but in terms of this space, it's not enough. Schools are in desperate need. There's never a week that I'm not busy. And so every day I'm making a choice of who misses out, which is hard because they're all in need. And the further out we go, the further regional we go, the more lack of services we have. So, yeah.
Oh, God. I mean, for force of habit, all I want to do is interview everyone for about 20 minutes. Okay, is there a neat seg from there to somewhere else, or am I just picking another random table? Okay, random table. Hello. Who is talking here?
Go on in.
Hello, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hello, I'm Emily. I'm from Youth Law Australia.
Welcome.
Thank you. Yes, so we spoke to funding structures, both top down and bottom up. So the first point, or the key headline that we had, was that funding agreements and their programs need to be funded for longer.
So we do have a segue. Yep.
Yes. And yeah, we need to identify the importance of legal capability and capacity work in those funding agreements, and include educating younger people in school-based education as part of that access to justice as a longer-term process. If you can't identify a legal issue, you can't
Get legal help.
Exactly. So our second headline was that the multiplicity of funding sources needs, to be reimagined on a sector-wide scale. So reimagine our approach to distribution and managing of funds that drives better outcomes.
Tell me more about reimagining funding.
So we talked a bit about the pros and cons of diversified sources of funding. So it is our opinion that the current funding structures do not work, the status quo is not working. And so we need to be reimagining what impact funding and the diversification of funding has on projects and on, legal service delivery as a whole. So, yeah.
So we're going beyond government for funding?
I would say yes. I mean, there's thought to be had to, attaching funding to political length, but then also politicises funding in a way that can be weaponised when, we're coming up from a budget to an election, and we don't really want to be caught in the lurch of that.
The political cycle.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. And our third and final point is that we want to fund enhanced practice in order to drive continuous improvement and effective scaling of centres. We need to be funded to work with the evidence that we've got. And so I guess, Youth Law Australia is a massive resource of evidence of what young people are really facing. But we need opportunity and funding to project that and work in collaboration with other centres to ensure that funding is driven by lived experience and good evidence. So,
Grand. Thank you. Anything further to add? Nope. All good. Anyone who wants to pick that up? Rachel Pounding once again.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Lynn. But Jacob had a very good suggestion. So we talked a lot about digital investment, AI, digital self-service, and technology to make lawyers cheaper. That was Jacob's suggestion. We agreed with what was said over there around the funding diversification, looking at single versus multiple sources, big investment in public education program. I think you'd like that, Lynn. And we also really like the early intervention investment framework that the department is utilising at the moment, and more of that, I think. Did I miss anything, Team?
Tell me quickly about the single and multiple sources diversification of funding. I'm intrigued by this.
Oh, well, we only had a short chat about that, but we talked about the challenges of having one source of funding and that it limits organisations to do different things, really, and they're beholden to that funder, whereas multiple sources can free us up.
Spread the love. Yep.
Spread the love. And mean that we can do things that funder might not be their agenda either.
Yeah. Okay. So I think I'm hearing untied funding. Is that what you're getting at?
Or not necessarily, but having more than one master, I guess. Yeah.
Right. Thank you very much. Okay. Anyone want to pick up on that thread, those threads? All right. I'm going over here then. Hello.
Pick one me then.
Andrea.
Hello,
Hello.
I'm Andrea from Victoria Legal Aid, and on my table I was joined by the colleague from Victoria Legal Aid, from Justice Connect and from Court Network. Our topic was leadership. So I tried to wordsmith to make everything sound like it was about leadership, but these were the three headlines for us.
Don't hold yourself back.
Thank you, I'll let loose. So community leadership, so working with existing community leaders, and also a bit along the lines of the concierge program that Katja was talking about, helping build future leaders, so helping build legal capability within emerging leaders from various communities. And also as part of that, having people from the community in decision making, whether it be on boards, community leaders and community members. Our second idea was around getting visible, a bit like this table was chatting about, getting law and the legal system into the real world, so that it's not that somebody has a problem and has to seek help, but you can tune in on your radio and hear a program, which Yolanda was telling us there's one that she likes to listen to, so you don't actually have to seek it out and you don't have to have a problem. You're just building capability. You're hearing about the law on the radio from a reliable source. And then I said, why stop there? Let's do TV. And then Justice Connect said, why stop there? Let's go meta and online. And world domination also in the cards for us too. And our final idea was around diversifying and getting creative. So trying new things, bringing in other sectors and expertise and bringing law to where people are, and also ensuring we've got diversity in leadership and at decision-making level, whatever that might be in whatever structure it might be.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think what I'm...
Can I ask about their Play-Doh that they've made?
Yes.
What is that
It looks like a cake-ish.
So this is representing diversity and connectedness.
Very lovely. And it's not edible. No. For those of us who have made Play-Doh, it is not edible. Well, you can eat it, but it's totally disgusting. It's got so much salt in it. So what I'm hearing, if I'm pulling these themes out, is a significant emphasis on education in various different forms, an interplay between the law and other disciplines, both at the educative level and then in practice as well, playing into this notion of law being literally a social service, which is something that lawyers in certain circumstances don't like to hear because they're special and different. But we know they're not. And we know from the 78% and the 66% that they really need not to see themselves that way. So who have I missed so far? We'll come back to the digital too. Hello. You are?
Cameron McRae. I'm from Neighbourhood Houses Victoria.
Welcome.
And I think we can follow that last one pretty well with the concept of tying legal practice and training into community. So we had more resources must enter the community, both money and people. The skills are there with legal professionals, but awareness and motivation to go into community is quite low. We need to have more evaluative tools as well and resources to measure outcomes in community to make sure that it's recorded and reported. And an increase in community awareness, so more pop-ups like we're doing this week at Neighbourhood Houses. Part of what we were talking about as well is the idea of getting students into neighbourhood houses or into community centres so that they can provide pro bono work. That helps them learn in a two-way sort of stream. And it brings it down because we see a gap between grass-level communities and professionals of all stripes. So we've seen this work in different sectors, so psychiatry, so social work, and bringing them down into the grassroots is educative and it uplifts everybody, so yeah.
Win-win.
It is.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Everything, that's a wrap? Yep. Okay, who's left? Oh, sorry. We're nearly there. Hello.
Hello.
Could you stand? If you can.
Yes.
What's your name?
My name is Barry. I was a CLC last year with Moonee Valley Legal Services. So I'm a resident at North Melbourne and also I'm a community leader. We do a lot of consultation with the community and those kind of things. One of the resources that we've pretty much lacking of is community don't know where the legal services are in terms of fines, in terms of those kind of things, and then the location as well. and that was useful for us as the workers to tell us, hey, we need to improve in those kind of things as an organisation as well. Another thing as well, we had building relationships with other organisations like councils, like community grassroots organisations as well. Because they're also a part of the circle in terms of the community as well. And one of the other best things as well is building trust to the community. So that's things that we've pretty much tried on the last 6 months with the CLC kind of thing. And then from then on, we started building a lot of connections with a lot of community leaders and do a lot of workshops as well. So, yeah.
And what difference do you think that's making?
It made a lot of difference, especially for me, because I'm a community leader and they'll call me after hours, after 5 o'clock kind of thing. So for me, that's been less work for me. But there's a lot of community knows now where to go for service kind of thing. Also, post-COVID, the lockdown took us a lot of advantage for us in terms of legal-wise. So a lot of people have just communicate that in terms of the issues of they have. One of the things that a lot of issues they've got is just pretty much housing and also maintenance in their housing and in their households as well. So yeah.
Big points. Thank you. That's great. Are we all done? No. How could I forget? Who's speaking here? Hamish?
Lauren?
You've got the paper in front of you.
I've got the paper, so I suppose I will.
You have the conch. What's your name?
I'm Lauren.
And?
I am a law student at Deakin.
Welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here. So we also had leadership. I think we just echo all the other voices around the room in our points. We said that we needed to design leadership models with the community that the models are being designed for, so definitely community involvement. We also said we need more specialist skill programs in firms assisting general services, so expanding their capacity and offering their assistance. And then finally we said we need different professions working together, so law is not just law, so everyone needs to get involved, and we said there needs to be more education and more exposure to law in general for everyday people.
Oh, simple. We can do that by the end of next week. Thank you. Congratulations, everyone. Oh, God. Introduce yourself, please.
Thank you, Len. Hello, everyone. My name is Tupe, and I'm from the Michael and Suzanne Boren Foundation in Aotearoa, New Zealand. So we are a family foundation and a philanthropic organisation, the only one that is specifically focused on funding law in New Zealand. And so we had a really great conversation here, concierge service and women's services, about similar things that you have all been discussing in the room as well. So we talked about access to sustainable funding being incredibly important, but what is even more important than funding? In New Zealand we have a saying from the tangata whenua, what is the most important thing in the world? It is people, it is people, it is people. So that's what we talked about, the people being incredibly important, the personnel that we have in organisations being very important, having that connection to community, navigators to assist with non-legal work. We talked about the importance of recognising the cultural load that bicultural workers carry with them, recognising and rewarding that. And as Katja mentioned earlier, the importance of having bicultural workers at every level of your organisation. In New Zealand, we're also having a conversation about the importance of the diversity of the profession and having people from all different walks of life, all different ethnicities at every level of the legal profession. And we also talked about the importance of a trust-based, place-based approach, and a question for us, how can we replicate that across the state?
Okay, I think we are done now. Is that right? Is there anyone left? No, good. I'm so sorry. Thank you ever so much. I think what we've done is completely redesign the legal system We've actually built it for the people this time, as opposed to the structures and the institutions that we labour under. So we have a translation piece to do between that vision, which I am really, I mean, I must admit, I'm so delighted with all that you've said and the vision it presents to me around what's possible. But we work within the structure we do. So we've got to break a few things. And that's, I suppose, the encouragement from here, is to think about how we do that and how we connect. People say break down silos. I have a problem with that. I tend to think silos exist because they're quite useful, in fact, and we tend to retreat to them. So let's not try and kid ourselves that we're going to smash them down. Let's just see if we can make them a bit more porous and connect across them, which is a much more realistic expectation, I think. So we've heard about all sorts of options. We've heard about funding and diversity of streams. We've heard about community engagement at every single tier and level of our legal engagement, whether or not that's law students or getting community workers in and lawyers out, and thinking about how we connect with neighbourhood houses and all the other community-facing organisations and structures that we have in Victoria that are there at our disposal. I'm sure Cameron and his colleagues at Neighbourhood Houses Victoria would be delighted to see more lawyers in their centres. And that's a relationship that we've really built over the last few years through Law Week. So we've set the ground, now we need to maximise our opportunities. We also talked a wee bit about digital, which I think is a really interesting and potentially mould-breaking prospect. And we're going to talk about this a bit more later in the week at another Law Week event on Thursday. The possibility that AI and various other tech opportunities present to cheapen the practice of law, to make it more accessible to more people, I think is enormously exciting. So that needs, I think, to be factored into our mix. But together with that comes the empathy piece, which I heard over and over again, either directly or implied in terms of what you've said. Community workers, bicultural workers, people who understand the experience, as Michelle's students do, that their level of advantage as law students and law graduates is not the common experience when you get into practice and you're dealing with huge numbers of problems, clustering of problems, people who just have really challenging lives of which the law is a part. So there's a lot to talk about, and I'm really, really thrilled that all of you have made the effort to be with us today. And I really encourage you to think again about, okay, what can we do from here? Because this cannot be the end. Otherwise, we've got a great report, huge amounts of evidence, and it stops dead. Then what? We've done nothing. And if I do anything in the next few years with the Pulse database that we have, it is to wring every cent and single data point out of it and make sure that we do something with it. Otherwise, it's not really worth the paper it's written on. So that is not where I'm proposing to land, and I encourage you all to join me on that. If there's anything we can do at the Foundation to assist in that process, then I will be there. So keep me posted on what you would like to do from here, who you would like to talk to, because I think what we also heard over and over again was this need for networking and organisational and interpersonal dialogue and what that can bring, and you've had evidence of that on your tables today. So there's a lot more to do. Final question. What will you do differently tomorrow? We all need to make a change. I need to make one too. And we are inviting you to write that down. Think about what you will do differently. Vicky is now distributing little thought bubbles, which we encourage you to jot something down on, entirely anonymous, but it is a very useful way for us to capture what comes out of today and where we might take this, and then to make efforts to progress these conversations beyond this afternoon. So take a couple of minutes and write something in your thought bubble. So thank you again very, very much indeed for coming today. And let me also express my deep appreciation of my fabulous Law Week team, the squad. We have Vicky, we have Leon. Earlier, I think we did have, no, we didn't have Jackie, did we? Nope. We've got Hugh. We've got a number of people. We've got Nick. There's a number of people from the VLW team around the room, and they have made today possible. Our very good friends at Deakin who have made this come together, Linda and Marilyn and Homer. Our magnificent scribe, I'm sure you've really enjoyed his work. Madison Kitching, the fabulous Dan from Atticus Media, and the equally stunning Eugene Highland, photographer. So thank you to the whole team who've made it all happen, but particularly to you, because this was a kind of weird event. This was an opportunity really to try and make Pulse live and to try and bring it to the real problems and the real applications that we can make of this data. So I'm very privileged and proud that you have taken me at my word and decided to join us for this conversation, and that it is an invitation to go further. So thanks again for coming. Enjoy Law Week. You have five more days to go. There is a heap more in the program. And please give us your thought bubbles and enjoy some opportunity to catch up with people and some afternoon tea outside. Cheers.